Sangye churdak soki chognam la jangcho bardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyengi pe sonam ki drola penchir sangye druparshu sangye churdak soki chognam la jangcho bardu dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyengi pe sonam ki drola penchir sangye druparshu sangye churdak soki chognam la Jangtu Badu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chenyengi Pesonam Ki Rola Penchir Sange Drupasho.
Thank you, Bob, and good morning. Let's just start again with a couple of minutes meditation on the breath. Now just look into your mind, check your motivation for being here this morning at this session. So if you find that your motivation for being here is one of simply seeking some kind of benefit in this life alone, then recognize that sort of motivation is coming from attachment. It's a negative motivation, it leaves a negative imprint on your consciousness, and that sooner or later ripens into the experience of suffering. Also, if your motivation is not a worldly one like that, but a Dharma motivation, for example, looking for benefit, looking for a better rebirth, looking to avoid rebirth in the lower realms in your next life, or even higher than that, a motivation seeking liberation from psychic existence for yourself alone, even though those are Dharma motivations. They're not the best motivation. The best motivation is bodhicitta motivation, the determination to reach enlightenment in order to enlighten all sentient beings. So if that's your motivation already, just rejoice. Otherwise, think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. Therefore, I'm going to study the teachings on the path to enlightenment based on the first lamrim, Stages of the Path text, Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, referring to the commentaries by Khunu Lama Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Geshe Sonam Rinchen. So I'm studying these teachings in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So generate that motivation. Okay, so here we are after 2 weeks. So we're talking about the 7-limb practice of purification and creating merit. And as Atisha was talking about that, the importance of that. In the 8th verse, he says, with the 7-part offering from the prayer of noble conduct, King of Prayers, we call it, with the thought never turn back till you gain ultimate enlightenment. So this is preparation for taking the Bodhisattva vow. So then we've been talking a little bit detail on the 7-limb practice, as we do it in the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, in the preliminary prayers we do every time. We're looking at the 7 limbs through the commentaries of Circle Rinpoche, which we've done, and we're about halfway through the commentary by Geshe Rabden. So the links to all those are, I think, in the calendar or in this week. So hopefully you've been able to look at those teachings in a bit more detail. Specifically, we're on the confession verse, or the declaration of negativities, downfalls. So the last thing we read was Geshe Rabten explaining this verse. So, Geshe Rabten's the translation in Geshe Rabten's teaching is, whatever non-virtues of body, speech, and mind, especially actions opposite to the three vows that I've created from beginningless time, from the bottom of my heart, I regret and fervently confess them all individually. And he was saying that our inherent tendency to create non-virtuous actions in this life is the fruit of past non-virtues, a clear sign of the great acquaintance we've developed with non-virtuous actions in past lives. So I'll finish Geshe Rabten Rinpoche's commentary on this verse, and then I'm going to look at Lama Zopa Rinpoche's commentary on Ganden Lagema, on the hundreds of deities of the land of joy, this Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. It's a really amazing commentary. It's online, lamayeshi.com. We've referred to it before. I don't know if there's a link somewhere, but maybe someone can put it in the chat if you can find it. So Geshe Rabten goes on. The next line says, and especially actions opposite to the three vows. In other words, in addition to all the non-virtuous actions that we've accumulated in general, by acting under the influence of ignorance, attachment, and aversion, essentially. In addition to those, we have some extra ones that we've accumulated in connection with the various vows we've taken. Most of us have taken all different kinds of pratimoksha vows, the upasaka, upasika. So those would be the lay vows, mainly the 5 lay vows that we take. Not to kill, not to steal, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to lie, and not to get intoxicated. Shramanara or Shramanarika, so those are the novice vows, novice monk and novice nun vows, and the bhikshu and bhikshuni vows, so those are the vows of the fully ordained nun and the fully ordained monk, or monk and nun. In addition to those, many of us have also taken tantric initiations in which we've received bodhisattva and tantric vows. It's a lot of stuff to break. Anyway, each of us should know what vows we've taken. However, far more than the number of vows we've taken are the transgressions of those vows that we've accumulated. So many that they completely pour over us like monsoon rain. If we look at our daily life very precisely, for example, if we look honestly at what we've done from this morning up to this moment, we'll find that even in this very short period, we've already accumulated many transgressions of our pratimoksha, bodhisattva, and tantric vows. So they talk about 2 kind of negativities, negative actions. There's natural negativities, such as killing, stealing, these ordinary actions that we do all the time. And then the extra ones that Geshe Rabten mentions, when we take vows. So those are I forget what the term is, natural negativities and kind of proscribed negatives. Is that right? Proscribed, when you do something against a vow you've taken. So, there are a lot of vows that monks and nuns take, and when they do actions contrary to those vows, they're creating negativity. Whereas if we do them, not having taken those vows, then they're not negative actions necessarily for us. So then the final line of this verse reads, "From the bottom of my heart, I regret and fervently confess them all individually." Nyingne means from the heart, Gepa Drakpo means with very strong repentance. This means that simply uttering a few words while feeling nothing in our heart is not confession. This does not help us purify our non-virtuous actions. We need to confess non-virtuous actions with strong repentance from the depths of our heart. Soso Shag has the two different meanings. So, as I said before, Geshe Rapton had his students, most of his students, especially the ordained ones, studying Tibetan. And then some of those students became very well known translators like Alan Wallace and Stephen Batchelor, who translated a lot of stuff. And so he often referred to the Tibetan when he's giving his commentaries. Soso Shag has two different meanings. One is the confession of each negative action individually, one by one. The other is confess again and again. Soso can be interpreted either way. However, interpreting it as again and again is deeper, more beneficial. It's not enough for us to confess our non-virtuous actions just once. We need to remember and confess them again and again. So, that's one reason why Lama Zopa Rinpoche had us put this little booklet together, daily purification, a short Vajrasattva practice with the 4 opponent powers. So I don't know if you all have a copy of that, but this is a wonderful, concise little practice that we can do every evening, every night before we go to sleep, when we go to bed. Before we go to bed, do this practice to purify any negativity we've created during the day. So that's why, it's not enough to confess our non-virtuous actions just once. We need to do them again and again. So if we do this every night, we're doing it again and again. Also, Geshe Tsulga put together a Vajrasattva practice. I don't know if you have that may even be closer to our hearts. I know I do that one every night, the one Geshe Tsulga put together. Is that in the resources on the website? Someone, Deborah, have a look some point and see. We should put it there anyway. But this is a great little, reason Rinpoche wanted to in this booklet. Then if you have a shirt pocket, I don't have a shirt pocket here, but you can keep it in your pocket or in your purse, or you don't put it in your back pocket and sit on it all day. That's not allowed. Anyway, keep it handy. If you can memorize it, so much the better. It's not that long, but it has the 4 opponent powers clearly indicated, so that's particularly useful. And as I've said a number of times before, when we see the pictures or statue of Atisha, like the one we have at the center, he has this stupa by his side, which whenever he noticed he'd broken a vow, he'd stop whatever he was doing and put their stupa in a high place, like on a rock or wherever he was traveling or somewhere, and do 3 prostrations and then do purification to purify a broken vow. So he said he never broke his pratimoksha vows, his monk's vows. He almost never broke his bodhisattva vows, But he said he broke his tantric vows like rain falling. So those are the most difficult to keep. So I don't know if he really did or not, but that's what he said. So, the purification practice is very important, as I've said many times also. It was the first main practice Lama Yeshe gave us in 1974, the Vajrasattva practice. Wisdom have published Lama's teachings on Vajrasattva, which is a really helpful book, especially if you're doing Vajrasattva retreat, especially if you're doing 3-month retreat. Then there's also this book. So that's one of the practices, Vajrasattva, purification. Another one, as we know, which we often do at the center, or we used to, I don't know if we do it anymore at the moment, the 35 Buddhas. So this book, also published by Wisdom, Geshe Jampa Gyatso's teachings on the practice of the 35 Buddhas, Purification in Tibetan Buddhism. This is also an excellent book, and he also explains the 4 opponent powers. So he talked a bit about purification and confession last time. I'm just going to. So that this is really, this is an aside, going through the Ganden Lagema teachings of Circle Rinpoche and Geshe Rabten, and now Lama Zopa Rinpoche. They're a bit of an aside from Lamp for the Path. And now as an aside from the aside, I'm just going to look at what Lama Zopa Rinpoche says in his commentary on the Ganden Lagema, which is in the chat. So make a note of that. Deborah's also put Geshe Tsulga's Vajrasattva practice there. And then Geshe Rabten's commentary, also the link is there. So thanks, Bob and Deborah. So these are really important teachings for us. This is, as beginners, this is what we really need to focus on if we want to get anywhere. Okay, so looking at Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on confession, so what we just talked about, I'm confessing individually with strong repentance from the heart. So one by one and again with the 2 interpretations Geshe Rabten explained. Individually or separately means that the downfalls or vices or negative karma received through degenerating the pratimoksha vows, those received by degenerating the bodhisattva vows, and those received by generating the tantric vows are purified by recalling each. So in retreat, if you're doing the 3-month retreat, it's good to spend some time, every day focusing on different sorts of negativities and trying to really recall all the ones we've done in this life. So you think of, say, 10 non-virtuous actions, killing, so you think of the intentional killing, maybe you've gone fishing or you've killed mice or mosquitoes or other insects. So you try and think and feel strong regret. Don't just make a list, you know, it's think of each one, each instance of killing that you can recall and feel strong regret, you know, remembering the suffering you've caused that sentient being and the suffering you caused yourself, whether you've experienced it yet or not, by leaving a negative imprint in your consciousness. Killing, stealing. So you think of that. That's easy for me. I stole my first Dharma book from a bookstore in Bangkok. So still working that one off, I think.
I think that one's purified by now. Publishing all those Dharma books.
Well, you know, I think more of carrying boxes of them, you know. Still doing it. So you're stealing, sexual misconduct, you know, all, you know, just think of them one by one. So every day, maybe, you know, if you've got a 3-month retreat, so there's a bit of a luxury to think about, you know, relive your sordid past. And so during the session in the sadhana, before you do the recitation of the mantra, so in a session, you know, the long mantra, you know, in a 2-hour session, depending how fast you recite, and when you know, you're not reciting the way you recite. Lama Yeshe gives some wonderful instructions in his Vajrasattva book, you know, Becoming Vajrasattva, about how to do retreat and how to recite the mantra, you know. And so you don't recite it out loud and you don't recite it completely silently. It's like you're just whispering so that you can just hear it, but a person sitting next to you, if you're in a group retreat, couldn't hear it, you know. So, so before you get to recite the mantra, then you think of, say, all your negativities killing. You just think 5, 10, 15 minutes, you know. And then the next session, so usually 4 sessions a day. So yes, I was going to say, when you recite in a 2-hour session, when you recite the mantra, 108 recitations of the long mantra, you can do 3 malas a session, 2 or 3 malas. So that's, you know, if you do 12 malas a day, and you have to do 108,000 mantras. Is that 90 days? Bob, you're a mathematician. Anyway, if you do 12 malas a day, I think in 90 days, in 3 months, you reach your total. But it's not just recitation. Obviously, you need to know the mantra by heart. You have to do the visualization, all these different purifications, the downward purification, the upward purification, instantaneous purification, then all 3 together. So actually, even in this little short little book, it's that different methods are explained, I think. Or maybe there's just a reference to where you can find it. It's a very little book, so there's not room for a lot of commentary. 'Cause it also means there are different methods of purifying the vices. So Rinpoche calls them vices, negative actions. Those you've received by generating pratimoksha vows have their specific methods of purification. Negative, so the monks and nuns have a ceremony they do twice a month, the full moon and the new moon, called sojong, which is to purify the broken, the formal purification twice a month of, and that they do it together in the group, of purifying their broken pratimoksha vows. So I think that's what he means, their specific methods, purification. The negative karmas accumulated by generating bodhisattva vows can be purified by doing the bodhisattva's technique of confession, such as prostration to the 35 Buddhas. They can be purified easily by performing the ceremony of taking the bodhisattva vows. So, when we do Guru Puja, which we're doing at 1 o'clock today, if you've done it, you'll know that there's a part where we take the bodhisattva vows. So if you've taken the bodhisattva vows, that purifies the broken vows and kind of restores the ones that you've broken and enhances those that you haven't broken, makes them, sort of polishes them a bit. And if you haven't taken the bodhisattva vows, then while reciting that, then you generate the aspiration. So remember, there are two kinds of bodhicitta. There's the aspirational bodhicitta and the entering bodhicitta. So the entering bodhicitta is what Lama Atisha is talking about, which we're just leading up to, if we ever get to it. So entering bodhicitta is when your aspiration sort of bears fruit and you actually take the bodhisattva vows and start actively engaging in bodhisattva's conduct. So if you haven't taken the bodhisattva vows, and the first time you have to take them from a qualified teacher, but you can do, His Holiness gives them on Zoom now, so you can take bodhisattva vows from Avalokiteshvara himself on one of those teachings His Holiness gives fairly regularly these days. So if you haven't taken them, then while those verses are being recited, you generate the wish, the aspiration that I'd like to take the bodhisattva vows. I want to become a bodhisattva in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So, by taking the vows, you also purify the broken vows by retaking them. Tantra has its own methods, such as Vajrasattva, self-initiation, that's the most powerful way of restoring the Tantric vows, and song offering. But, when we do a Guru Puja, those bodhisattva vows and taking the Tantric vows inserted into the Guru Puja aren't in the original. They're added by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He added a lot of, the practice that we do is combined Jorcha Lama Chöpa, Guru Puja, with the preliminary practices sort of integrated into it. Jorcha is a preliminary practice teaching or puja. We used to do that when we first started the International Mahayana Institute in Kopan back in '74. We, the monks and nuns who were living, Western monks and nuns living at Kopan, would get together, and that was our morning puja. So these days, Rinpoche prefers to combine Guru Puja, Jorcha that he's put together. So it's Guru Puja with a whole bunch of additional practices, some of which we throw in when we do it, and some of which we which we usually don't do because it really makes the practice go for 3 or 4 hours if you do it very slowly. So, if you want to do an extensive practice, on one of the special days or something like that, you can do the combined Guru Puja, Jorcha, and all the additional extra practices that Lama Zopa Rinpoche has put in. Okay, so in that there's also the Tantric Vows. So those who've taken Tantric Vows can do that ceremony for purifying and restoring their Tantric Vows. So Vajrasattva self and Tsok is also, which again we do as part of the Guru Puja. So that's also a powerful way to purify broken Tantric vows, doing Tsok. So this word implies recalling all those. So. From the heart means not just doing an imitation of confession, not just saying the words, but doing it from the heart, not just with the mouth, but from the heart, and that with strong repentance. So, as Geshe Rabkin said, it's not just sort of listing in your mind all the negative things you've done, but feeling very strongly, feeling strong regret. And that's why I say in retreat, if you can think of each instance of killing that you can bring to mind, just in this life. Of course, in previous lives, we've done much worse. But if at that time, in a 3-month retreat, you spend time bringing these things to mind and regretting them, then later on, a lot of that, when you're doing practice more quickly, then still a lot of that comes to mind and you have more feeling for it. The other lines in this verse say that what one is confessing is any non-virtue that's been accumulated by oneself from time without beginning, from beginningless samsaric rebirths. Negative karma accumulated with body, speech, and mind from time without beginning, particularly the actions opposite to the 3 vows. Negative karmas have had degenerated pratimoksha, bodhisattva, and tantric vows. In Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, the main emphasis is to properly practice or cherish most or pay attention to the 3 vows, to protect them as you would protect your heart or your eyes. Also, among Lama Tsongkhapa's actions, the most important was his clarification of the details of the 3 levels of vows and spreading of this knowledge. It's on the shelf, I think. Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the Tantric vows is called The Fulfillment of All Hopes. So that was translated by Gareth Sparrow, and that's published by Wisdom. So it's important to know the details of the Tantric vows if you've taken them, and that Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary is one of the best ways of learning the details of the Tantric vows. Then there are a number of commentaries on the Bodhisattva vows. There's, there's this one, and there's a number of commentaries online. So basically, living in these 3 vows, these 3 levels of vow, there's another commentary from a Nyingma tradition that Wisdom published. We published that many years ago. I forget what it's called. It's on teachings on the Pratimoksha, Bodhisattva, and Tantric vows. basically, living in these 3 vows is protecting yourself by abstaining from creating those specific negative karmas, which are an interference to having happiness in this life, an interference to happiness in future lives, and an interference in the achievement of your own liberation and the achievement of enlightenment for all sentient beings. Why is Lama Tsongkhapa's main emphasis not the 400,000 Ngondro practices, but on, so, you know, the general Ngondro or preliminary practices, we do 100,000 Vajrasattva's, 100,000 mandala offerings, 100,000 refuges, and I think 100,000 prostrations. Those are the 4 ones in all the main Tibetan traditions. Prostration, Vajrasattva, refuge, and mandala offerings. So, you know, as I've mentioned before, in the Gelug we have had another 5. So there are 9 preliminary practices, like Guru mantra. So we do 100,000 Lama Tsongkhapa, Migme Migtsemas. We do 100,000 of those. And 100,000 satsangs, 100,000 water bowls, 100,000 jinsek, Dorji Kadro, fire pujas, burning puja, and 100,000 Samaya Vajra or Damsik Dorji, which is sort of the tantric equivalent of the Vajrasattva, which is specifically for purifying broken tantric vows. So there are these 9 preliminaries. So, you know, people often talk about doing a 3-year retreat. So now we've jumped from 3 months to 3 years. So before you do a 3-year retreat, it's ideal to spend a year before that, so that makes it a 4-year retreat, doing these 9 preliminaries, or as many of them as you can in a year, or doing them however long it takes, and then starting the 3-year retreat. If, you know, we prepare our mind well like that, the 3-year retreat will be much, much more effective than if we just launch straight into it. Not many people in FPMT have done 3-year retreat. Nyingje, Paula Nyingje, Lunduk Nyingje, she's disrobed now. She's done 2, I think, with her then partner, Roger Munro, Venerable Sunden. They did 3 years in the 90s in a couple of cabins they built up at Milarepa Center. Then they got ordained, and then I think they did another 3 years somewhere. Maybe in land of karma biding in California, the Shine land. So I think they've done 2 3-year retreats, those guys. And Venerable Gyatso, Adrian Feldman, he did a 3-year retreat on Kangaroo Island in Australia. I'm sure there are others, but I can't remember. There aren't that many. In the Kagyu tradition, particularly, and the Nyingma tradition, they emphasize it a lot. And in the 80s and 90s, a lot of Western Nyingma and Kagyu students were doing 3-year retreats. Dujun Rinpoche had a center in France where a lot of people did those retreats then. The Western teacher, Suryadas, Lama Suryadas, I think he did 2 3-year retreats there. And then they had a Kagyu center in Wappinger Falls in New York. They used to do regular 3-year retreats there. Can you imagine taking off 3 years and doing a retreat? So why is Lama Tsongkhapa's main emphasis not the 400,000 Ngondro practices, but on protecting karma by living in the 3 vows? So here I think we get the answer to the question about the FKMT. Because if you live purely in as many vows as you have, you create less negative karma, less interference to achieving enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That in itself becomes a purification, which purifies past negative karmas as well. So saying living day to day purely in the vows is as effective as doing those preliminary practices. And again, not emphasizing 3-year retreat, not emphasizing doing these 100,000 this, 100,000 that, these different 9 preliminaries, but doing some of them every day, in the morning and night, is, if you do it every day, some purification, creation of merit every day of your life, rather than take off 3 months and do it intensively, and then come back and go back to how you were before, and not do much every day, maybe less effective than not doing those intensive 3-month 100,000 practices, but doing a little bit of, Vajrasattva and mandala offerings and different things every day. In India, in the 70s, some of the lamas gave extensive commentaries on Guru Puja. Geshe Ngawang Dage gave one, Geshe Rabten gave one. And the commitment, they said, is if you take this commentary on the Guru Puja, you have to do Guru Puja every day for the rest of your life. So we find it hard to do twice a month. Doing it every day. So a lot of people took the commitment and then dropped it, which is not ideal. But people who've kept it up, if not every day, most days, they say you can actually, once you get into it, you can do it, in 30 or 40 minutes. And some of them memorized it in Tibetan. So if you memorized it in Tibetan, of course, just blah, 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 going through the words really quickly, it is fulfilling your commitment to do it every day. But in terms of affecting your mind, it's not really doing much to transform your mind, as if you did it slowly, in an hour or 2 and stopped after each verse or after each section and did the meditation and the visualization and everything. So, sometimes I would say that if you do a retreat, you go into retreat to do 100,000 Vajrasattva mantras, and you do them really slowly with very powerful, clear visualization and feeling for the purification, then even if you don't do 100,000, your retreat was probably more effective than if you did 100,000, but sort of breezed through it without doing much meditation, just in order to rack up the numbers. So doing things slowly, with understanding, with clear visualization, and heartfelt sincerity, is more powerful than doing lots and lots of mantras without that. So living day to day in those vows itself becomes purification. It purifies negative karmas. It not only stops you creating any more negative karmas, if you follow your vows, it purifies those created in the past. Then you do not need to do that much preliminary practice. These hundreds of thousands. How much preliminary practice you need to do depends on how many obstacles you have to generating the realizations of lamrim and attaining enlightenment. If the vows, the essential method for achievement of enlightenment, are not taken care of, and you continuously create negative karma by doing the opposite, that creates the need to continuously do many preliminary practices in every life. As long as you continue to create negative karmas through actions opposite to the 3 vows, the preliminary practices have no end. Lama Tsongkhapa's emphasis has great wisdom. If much emphasis is placed on practices other than keeping the 3 levels of vows, and the 3 vows are regarded as secondary, you have to do the preliminary practices endlessly. The reasoning is the same as for doing a guru yoga practice. You do not want a loss, you want a profit. You do not want suffering, you want happiness. If your effort is to put into living in the 3 vows more purely, you accumulate that much less negative karma, and so need to do less preliminary practices. So Rinpoche is just making the same point over again. Not only that, but it's easier and there are less obstacles to the quick generation of the lamrim realizations and the achievement of enlightenment. That is why being a gelong, a fully ordained monk, is regarded as the best, or a fully ordained nun, is regarded as the best basis for practicing Tantra, as one is then living in the highest number of vows. This was explained by Lama Tsongkhapa in Lamrim Chenmo, in the Great Treatise. So this confession prayer in Ganden Lagema contains great practical advice. In other words, if protecting karma, which is the most important thing, is not taken care of, and keeping the vows is taking care of karma, and instead some other things are emphasized, such as particular retreats that each tradition has, it's unskillful, especially if done just to kind of get them under your belt and be able to say you've had such and such an experience. If such, I've done this retreat, I've done that retreat. If such practices are regarded as important, but the important practice for gaining all success, protecting karma, is not practiced, it's not skillful, because those various retreats and so on are for purifying negative karma and the obscurations. So how quickly you can finish practicing Dharma is dependent on how well you protect karma. So he's saying, protecting karma is done better on a day-to-day basis than, every now and then doing 100,000 this or that retreat. I think it was Pabonka Dechen Nyingpo, Pabonka Rinpoche, who said, it was said by Kyabgon Dorji Chung, who I think is one of his root gurus, it is Lama Tsongkhapa's Ganden tradition that the moral conduct that one has vowed is to be regarded as the essential main practice. So in our tradition, moral conduct, our vows of moral conduct are the essential or the main practice. So I think the Gelug, where the Gelug tradition, the Gelug means Ge means virtue, so the virtuous tradition, the tradition that Lug means tradition. So, the tradition protecting morality. So Geshe Tsulga's nickname, his Tsultrim Chirpel was his monk's name. Tsulga, Ga means happiness, Tsul means morality. So, happy to be protecting morality, I think was how so I guess in the monastery he was recognized as taking Pabonka Rinpoche's advice to heart, that the essential practice is protecting your Pratimoksha vows, and your Bodhisattva and Tantric vows. But Tsultrim is, discipline, the perfection of discipline, perfection of morality. The sixth perfection, Tsultrim, is the Tibetan term for that, morality. So Lama Tsongkhapa said in the Yönten Shugyuma, a prayer in the Jogcha, So that's foundation of all good qualities. He said, "Please bless me to be able to hold the root of the teachings, liberation for self derived from pure attitude as my main practice, with strong recall and awareness." I can't remember how the verse goes now in the translation that we use, but Geshe Tsulga had us memorize that. Remember, Deborah? We had to memorize foundation of all good qualities, which we did. And then I've forgotten. I don't know. Do you remember it, Deborah?
I do, but I actually use a different translation, which I like better, which is more rhythmic. It's easier for me to memorize it.
Okay. Anyway, so there's that verse there that is in Foundation of All Good Qualities. Here, the pure attitude means renunciation of samsara. How well you're able to live purely in the vows depends on your renunciation and bodhicitta. The awareness of impermanence and death, particularly uncertainty of the time of death, how even today, even this hour, even this minute, there's great uncertainty, is the strongest method to generate renunciation. The other factor, compassion, the thought of loving kindness towards others, feeling that it's unbearable that others are suffering, becomes a reason for you to practice and live purely in the three vows, since this is the essential path for the achievement of enlightenment. So it also depends how much you cherish other sentient beings. The thought of loving kindness and compassion, that the other sentient beings are suffering and devoid of happiness, becomes the reason for putting effort into this. You're kind of ashamed to generate the three vows that you've taken for the sake of sentient beings. Also, you can see how sentient beings have an incredible need for your help to free them from obscurations and lead them to enlightenment by developing your own mind. That development of the mind comes from living in the three vows. This quote, I think, is from Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. If one has degenerated the moral conduct one has vowed, there's no other Dharma practice left to do. It's like putting water in a pot which has a broken bottom. However much water you put into a pot with no bottom, it does not remain. Then it says, it's not enough to just be courageous in accepting the vows to be followed. If they're degenerated, they should be immediately confessed separately. Doing this is something that pleases the learned ones who know the very essential points of practicing Dharma. So the importance of moral conduct is, just fundamental in Dharma practice. And when we talk about the three higher trainings, conduct, concentration, and wisdom. So the conduct is without pure moral conduct, it's impossible to develop single point of concentration. And without single point of concentration, it's impossible to realize emptiness. So, and without realizing emptiness, there's no way to attain liberation and enlightenment, to get out of cyclic existence. So even the monks' robes emphasize this point. We see the monks, they're wearing, the lower robe, Tibetan monks, the lower robe, the maroon shamtab, the kind of skirt thing, and then the Zen, the kind of maroon colored shawl. Underneath the shawl, and there's an underskirt, dare I say, a petticoat, under the monk's shemtab, the lower robe, this skirt-like thing, that's yellow. And underneath sometimes they also wear the donka, this thing with the elephant ears, this monk's kind of shirt. Underneath, sometimes it's all red, and sometimes it has a yellow front part. Anyway, there's different reasons for all that. So Gelug tradition. So this yellow thing, Lama Yeshe always had us wear the yellow, the monk's shirt with the flying little elephant ears, that had the yellow panels in the front, and then kind of a red, maroon coloured shawl, sort of collar thing around it. So those yellow comes from the tantric colleges. So when Lama had us wearing that, some of the other monks were quite critical of him having these stupid Westerners wear this kind of advanced tantric college sort of donka, called a donka, that monk's shirt thing. But anyway, Lama didn't care. So we all wore those, and then more people started wearing them, and a lot of the other Gelug monks wore them anyway. But underneath that, there was a yellow kind of singlet or a yellow undershirt. So so that yellow or gold symbolized morality, and the red color of the robes symbolizes working for others. So the monk together, it was, and like His Holiness always says, you can sum up Buddhist philosophy in the phrase, if you can't help others, at least don't harm them. So if you can't help others, at least don't harm them. So obviously the most desirable thing is to help others, but if that's too much, at least don't harm them. And of course, not harming them is also helping others. So, the yellow undergarments symbolize the fundamental basis of morality, at least don't harm them. And then the red maroon robes symbolize working for others, helping others, leading others to enlightenment. So even the robes stress the importance. So, when you put your robes on, you're supposed to remember all this. And then there's, different symbolic things, like when you put on the shemtab, the maroon kind of skirt thing, there's a way it has to be folded, which is really hard when you're learning to do it. But it has 4 folds that symbolize the 4 noble truths. Anyway. And so the monks, the donka with the elephant ears, even the ears have blue piping around the edge. So, all these things have symbolic significance. It's not enough just to be courageous in accepting the vows to be followed. If they're degenerated, they should be immediately confessed separately. Doing this is something that pleases the learned ones who know the very essential points of practicing Dharma. So the essential points of practicing Dharma does not refer to the reasons why you should practice Dharma. It means the important points of Dharma practice. Just think about the Theravadan monks. So the monks from the, in the Hinayana tradition. There must be many bodhisattvas who are Theravadins and so have not met the profound Paramitayana and Tantric teachings. But even though they do not have such an extensive knowledge of Dharma, they practice the basic Dharma well and live a very satisfied life. They have few problems, and whenever death comes, they are kind of happy or satisfied because they've lived a most worthwhile and enjoyable life. Even though they've not heard teachings on shunyata as subtle as madhyamaka, their lives are so satisfied and they experience real happiness. Lamas say, look at this body to know what was done in the past life. What the future life will be is dependent on the actions of this present life. So, we see we have a human body, so we know we've had perfect human rebirth and practiced Dharma very extensively. Because this perfect human rebirth is extreme, as we go on and on about all the time, is so, extremely rare and precious. So we worked in the past very hard. So whether we get it again or not depends on what we do with it in this life. Pabonka Deche Ningpo said, actually one can tell without needing to make mo's, divination, what one's future life will be by looking at one's own lifestyle. So some Tibetan people used to go to lamas and ask them to do divination as to tell them what their next life is going to be, what their future life will be. And so I guess some monks were good at doing that, or they pretended to be good at doing that. And no one ever knows whether they were right or wrong in predicting someone else's future life. But Pabonka Rinpoche said, you don't need to ask a lama, you just look at what you're doing with your life and you can figure it out for yourself. In general, any negative karma can be purified. Why? Because it's the nature of negative karma. It has no other good quality, but it does have this one, the possibility of being purified. By doing powerful purification, you can completely purify the negative karma and therefore not have to experience it. That is the best outcome. The middling one is that you experience some problem, perhaps sickness or a disaster in this life, which depletes that karma, and you don't have to experience it in the lower realms or in coming lives. So, that's how we're supposed to think. When things go wrong in this life, instead of getting depressed or wishing it weren't happening, we should rejoice that we're purifying this karma in a lighter way than if we'd had to not experience it, go through this experience in this life, and that karma remained on our mind stream until the next life, when we might have to experience it in hell, or as a hungry ghost, or as an animal, undergoing some much worse suffering. The lesser outcome is that through doing purification, even if you do get born in the lower realm and experience the suffering result, it will last for a shorter duration and be less intense. So those are the benefits of doing purification practices. Either we get rid of the negative karma altogether, or we mitigate its future effect. To do perfect confession, the most important thing is the 4 remedial powers. If you do Samaya Vajra or Vajrasattva, or confession to 35 Buddhas, so as I mentioned, Samaya Vajra, Damsik Dorji, is one of the 9 preliminary practices, specifically aimed at purifying broken Tantric vows, but of course, purifying all other negativity as well. Vajrasattva, which we talk about all the time, and 35 Buddhas, which we also talk about a lot. So in terms of the 100,000 retreat, or the preliminary practices, this Vajrasattva is one, Samaya Vajra is another. When the 100,000 prostrations, when we do it in the context of the 35 Buddhas. So we do the 35 Buddha sadhana, and then we do the 100,000 prostrations, reciting the names and doing the visualization of those 35 Buddhas. And if you think of the meaning of the prayer that you do, so we don't just sit down and suddenly do 100,000 this or 100,000 that. It comes in the context of a sadhana, So this is a sadhana, this is a little sadhana, a little short Vajrasattva sadhana. a method of accomplishment, sadhana. So if we think of the meaning of the prayers in the sadhana, and then also do the purification practice with good concentration, good visualization, and good recitation, then it becomes a perfect practice. So the 4 powers. So you remember why we need to do 4 opponent powers, right? Because there are we're trying to purify negative karma, but negative karma has 4 kind of results, 4 negative karmic results. So so there's the what we call the maturation or the ripening result, which determines the realm that you're going to be reborn into. So we're talking about negative karma. Positive karma also has 4 results, similar. So the ripening result is the result that determines the realm you're going to be reborn in, the upper realm or the lower realm, hell realm, hungry ghost, animal realm with respect to negative karma. Then there are the 2 results. So that's the ripening or maturation result. Then there are the 2. So we divide these 4 we ripen these 4. We divide these 4 results into 2. The throwing karma or the precipitating karma, and the completing karmas. So the throwing karma or the precipitating karma, that's the karma that throws you into your next life, into the realm into which you're going to be reborn. So it's also called the maturation or the ripening result. Lama Zopa Rinpoche sometimes referred to as the result of the fullness of the sin. Anyway, so that throwing karma, so that throws you into that next life, and then the completing karmas are those that determine what's going to happen to you in that life. So there are 2 completing karmas similar to the cause, and then there's the environmental result. So there's the throwing karma, the 3 completing karmas, the 2 completing karmas similar to the cause, and the environmental result. The 2 karmic results similar to the cause are the results similar to the cause in experience, where you experience back on you negative karma, good karma that you've done, and the results similar to the cause in habit or tendency, where you tend to repeat that action again and again. So in terms of negative karma, Lama Zopa Rinpoche says the worst of these 4 results, worse than being reborn in hell, is the result similar to the cause in habit, where you create negative action again and again. So that just means endlessly remaining in cyclic existence. So in terms of purifying negative karma, we have to stop these 4 negative results, these 4 suffering results. So we have 4 powers. So here Rinpoche calls them, the power of the object, the power of the remedy, the power of repentance or regret, and that goes on to pages, and the power of turning away from the negative karma, or the power, sometimes called the power of resolve. So sometimes people remember these more easily by remembering the 4 R's. So the power of the object would be called the power of reliance. Reliance, remedy, repentance or regret, and resolve. Or sometimes the resolve, the power of the vow. So, as I've said a few times before, when Lama was giving teachings on the Vajrasattva practice, he asked us to come up, I can't remember what the Tibetan word is for this 4th one, the power of, resolve, or the power of determination, or the power of the vow. So, so he wanted us to come up with a word, and none of us could come up with a word. So he was very dissatisfied. So he didn't like any of the words we offered, like, resolve or vow or determination, not to do this action again. So he said it's more than a vow. It's more than a determination. It's something deep within you that when the opportunity or the possibility or the wish, to do that particular action again arises, there's absolutely no way you're going to go there. You're going to do it. It's just impossible, because you have such a deep and clear understanding of how harmful and negative it is. So, often, so it's like, if you put your hand on a hot stove, like a really hot stove, and you burn yourself, you only need to do it once, never to do it again. And you don't have to make a vow, oh, that was bad, that hurt. I vow never to put my hand on the hot stove again. Or I'm determined I'll never put my hand on the hot stove again. I resolve never to put my hand on the hot. You don't need to do that. It hurts. You're not going to do it again. It's kind of an intuitive understanding that through experience. So that's easy, because the result, the suffering result, is so close to the action, it's very easy to associate them. But with karma, it's not like that. We're experiencing the result of karma we might have created, billions of years ago, today. And the karma we create today, we may experience, if we're still in psychic existence, billions of years from now. So our mind isn't able to understand karma deeply enough to link that cause with that result. So that's why we need this power. But Lama was saying, it's got to come from deep within us and based on a deep understanding of the shortcomings of killing, stealing, lying, and all these other negative actions, breaking our vows. So, you know, long way, baby, as Lama used to say. Long way, baby. He liked that. I think he might have said there was, well, there's a song, is it You Come a Long Way from St. Louis? But baby, you got a long way to go. There was, I think, there was a Virginia Slims cigarette ad that Lama saw on TV. I think advertising particularly cigarettes for women, Virginia Slims. So you come a long way, baby. So now you can smoke this kind of cigarette. So Lama liked the thing, you've come a long way, baby, but baby, you've got a long way to go. That was the punchline for Lama. So he abbreviated the whole thing to long way, baby. So we understood that to mean, okay, we've come a long way, you know, from the lower realms to perfect human rebirth. But in terms of enlightenment, long way, baby. So anyway, so just to abbreviate now, so there are these four powers. So the power of the object. So these four powers purify these four results. Which purifies which? So according to, so I've heard it different ways, different lamas explain it, but in Geshe Jumpa Gyatso's book, on his commentary on the 35 Buddhas, Purification of Tibetan Buddhism, he says that the power of the object is when we employ that power, that purifies the environmental result. So the environmental result is, you know, being born in a war zone or in a famine, or, you know, if it was good karma, it's being born like, you know, in an affluent country like we have been, you know, where there's not a lot of danger, you know. Of course, there's always danger in samsara, but, you know, there can be more danger or less. So we don't have that many problems compared to, I'd say, most of the people in the world. So in terms of purifying, so why we're born like that is because we've employed the power, we've employed the power of the object. So we've done a lot of purification of the environment. So we had not this, we're not born in some of these dangerous, difficult places. Then the power of the remedy, that purifies the throwing karma, you know, the realm of rebirth. So by employing the power of the remedy, so I'll get into these in a minute, but employing the power of remedy, what does that purify? That purifies the result of being born in the lower realms, being born as a hungry ghost, as an animal, as a hell being. Power of the remedy. The power of repentance or regret so that purifies the result, similar to the cause in experience. So if we kill, we get killed. We have short life. We have serious illnesses. So the power of regret, you know, bringing to mind the negative actions we've done and feeling what a mistake that was, you know. And feeling, I wish I hadn't done that. Now I'm going to experience the suffering result. So that purifies the result, similar to the cause in experience, where we, reap what we sow. And finally, the power of resolve, or, whatever we want to finish up calling it. So Rinpoche calls it the power of turning away from negative karma. So if we want to give it an R, we could call it the power of reversal. I don't know if that would work or not. The power of turning away from negative karma. So that, determining not to do that action again, that stops the power, that stops the results similar to the cause in habit, the worst one, where we just have this tendency, if we kill once, twice, we develop a habit of killing or stealing or lying. So, you just see how it works. Okay, so we have 4 powers because there are 4 negative results, negative suffering results we want to stop. So each of these powers has the power to diminish or completely eliminate that experience. So on the power of the object, so this is what purifies the environmental result. Rinpoche says, we create negative karma in relation to the holy object. So that needs to be purified. So what is the power of the, he'll probably say this, but just to summarize, the power of the object, what is the object? There are 2 ways, there are 2 objects, generally speaking, with which we create negative karma. There are holy objects, like our guru, or like, Dharma books, like keeping this in your back pocket and sitting on it, or stepping over Dharma books. I mean, all these etiquette things that we learn when we start going into gompas. We don't point our feet at the altar, all these things, But so if you study the teachings on refuge, the commentary explains, what actions to avoid in terms of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. How we should relate to Buddha statues, how we should relate to Dharma books, how we should relate to the Sangha. So if we create negative karma with these, or our guru and so forth, then that's the object with which we create that kind of negative karma. So we create negative karma with holy objects by making mistakes in our relationship with them. And the other way we create negative karma with sentient beings. We kill sentient beings. We steal from sentient beings. We lie to sentient beings. We do all these other negative actions in relation to sentient beings. So those are the other kind of object. So how we purify negative actions created in relation to holy objects is we take refuge. So that's one part of the power of the object. And how we purify negative karma created with sentient beings, including ourselves. We generate bodhicitta, determination to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So that's the kind of nutshell of this power of the object. So Rinpoche says, we create negative karma in relation to the holy objects, and it needs to be purified. That is why in the Yamataka sadhana, even though it begins with refuge, again, in the middle, before starting Vajrasattva purification, refuge comes again. So that in certain sadhanas, the refuge is, we always do refuge when we start a Dharma practice like this teaching, or or whatever we do, and then as a preliminary to the purification in the Yamataka sadhana, not sure about other tantric sadhanas, refuge again comes as a part of the power of the object before we do the Vajrasattva purification. So a lot of tantric sadhanas have the Vajrasattva practice sort of after some of the preliminaries. So when Lama gave us this Vajrasattva practice, he called it Haruka Vajrasattva, because he used the Vajrasattva sadhana, the purification part, from the larger Haruka Chakrasamvara sadhana. So these long sadhanas are quite long, and they have a Vajrasattva purification section in them. So this, actually this painting on the front here, I found that painting in Nepal. Anyway, it was painted by a Western student in Nepal in the early 70s. And for some reason Rinpoche said that he liked it, was his favorite Vajrasattva image. So I had a large print of it as my main Vajrasattva image when I did my Vajrasattva retreat in Laudo in 1974. And you can't really see it, but such a beautiful, I really felt, I was kind of so in love with this painting. It's such a beautifully done, I mean, all Vajrasattvas, all Buddhas are beautiful. And if you discriminate, say, oh, that's an ugly Buddha, that's a horrible Buddha, oh, I don't like that Buddha. These are some of the ways we create negative karma. We create, why we need the power of the object. That's some of the ways we create negative karma with holy objects, by discriminating. I don't like that Buddha. I like this Buddha. I'm not allowed to say that. You can say the artwork on this painting of the Buddha is not very good, so you can criticize the artwork, but not the Buddha. So I don't know if you can compliment the artwork, but I like the artwork on this very, very much. This was also, there was a postcard that I got in Nepal in 1973. It was with Lama Tsongkhapa, and the tanka is in the National Museum in Copenhagen in Denmark. And I got permission when we were doing Lama Yeshe's biography, Big Love. There's such a beautifully painted Lama Tsongkhapa image. I really related very strongly to that. So we got permission from the museum to reproduce it in Big Love. So there are certain images you'll see that really kind of speak to you, or somehow that attract you. And this was a Vajrasattva image that did it for me. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche said he liked it very much too. And there's Samanta Bhadra is above Vajrasattva there, so we wouldn't normally see that. In the Gelug, you'd see Vajradhara probably. And underneath there's Padmasambhava. So the student who did this was a Nyingma student, I guess. So the power of the object. I think we have puja at 1 o'clock, so I'll probably better stop here. So I'm going to pick this up again next week, the 4 powers. It's really important we know how to do this, to do purification. So if we're going to do if there's one thing we're going to do, that's what we should do. Okay. So thank you very much. And if you can, we'll do the extensive 7 limb practice at 1 o'clock, isn't it? 1 o'clock. So see you then. But now we just dedicate. So we started by generating body Cheetah. We've been reading Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on Ganden Lagema. So we've definitely created a lot of merit the last couple of hours. So just to protect it from being destroyed by anger, wrong views, and so forth, we dedicated. So think, because of this merit, may I quickly reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And thank you, Bob. Take us out.
Saji perki jukshin ritual ravding jini degin padi sangejing dumingte uwagi drokun nabdagjing lacher parshug jitsun lame kutseram te jing nam katrin le chokchugi padang lo sang ten pedren mesa sungi drowe munsel tatu nek yurchig idam guru ratna mandalakam niryatayami. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chen Rizig remain in life till samsara's end. Savior of the Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who extensively clarifies the path that unifies emptiness and compassion, to the lotus in the hand, Lord Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's mortal way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majjhina's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having gained Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise, and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Migmate se wei ter chen chen rezik, dreame kin pei wang po jom pel yang, gong chen ke pei su gen song kapa, lo sang drak pei Jabla Sowade.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. See you next week, if not at 1 o'clock.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nick. Great class.